The ninth inning was supposed to be a formality. A closing sequence. A final 3-out standing between the Dodgers and another win at home. Instead, it became chaos. Pure, unfiltered, uncontrollable chaos. And at the center of it all, lying on the dirt near first base with teammates and coaches rushing toward him, was Shohei Ohtani. The best player on the planet. The face of baseball. The man who carries the hopes of an entire franchise on his shoulders every single night. He was down. And he wasn't getting up quickly. The stadium, which had been buzzing with the comfortable energy of a game well in hand, went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from tension or anticipation. The kind of silence that comes from shock. From disbelief. From the collective realization that something had gone terribly, horribly wrong. Because Ohtani hadn't just been hit by a pitch. He hadn't stumbled awkwardly or collided with a fielder in a routine play. He had been ruthlessly beaten by multiple Rockies players in a sequence so wild, so unexpected, so violent that even the broadcast crew struggled to find words to describe what they were watching unfold in real time. It started with a play that should have been simple. A ground ball hit sharply toward the right side of the infield. Ohtani, running hard out of the batter's box the way he always does, was heading toward first base. The Rockies' first baseman was moving to cover the bag. The second baseman was fielding the ball and preparing to make the throw. Everything was unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to unfold in a routine 4-3 groundout. Except it didn't stay routine. The throw came in high. Not wildly high, but high enough that the first baseman had to reach for it. And in that moment, with Ohtani charging down the line and the first baseman stretching to make the catch, their paths collided. Hard. The sound of the impact echoed through the stadium. Ohtani went down immediately. The first baseman stumbled backward but stayed on his feet. And for a split second, it looked like it might just be an unfortunate collision. The kind of bang-bang play that happens in baseball where two players are both doing their jobs and physics just puts them in the same space at the same time. But then something shifted. The Rockies' dugout erupted. Players started spilling onto the field. And what had been an accidental collision suddenly became something much darker. Because as Ohtani was trying to get to his feet, as he was shaking off the impact and checking himself for injury, multiple Rockies players were moving toward him. Not to help. Not to check if he was okay. But with aggression. With intent. With the kind of energy that makes a baseball field feel like something much more dangerous. The first Rockies player to reach Ohtani shoved him. Not hard enough to knock him back down, but hard enough to make it clear this wasn't about the play anymore. This was personal. The second player came in with words. Shouting. Pointing. Getting in Ohtani's face with the kind of rage that doesn't come from a single play. It comes from something that's been building. From frustration. From resentment. From the feeling that this one player, this one superstar, represents everything that's going wrong for a team that's struggling to stay relevant. And then the third Rockies player joined in. And that's when the situation exploded. Because now it wasn't just a confrontation. It was multiple players surrounding Ohtani. Multiple players shouting at him. Multiple players creating a physical presence that felt less like a baseball disagreement and more like an attack. Ohtani, to his credit, didn't retaliate. He didn't swing. He didn't shove back. He stood there, absorbing the aggression, trying to create space, trying to de-escalate a situation that was spiraling out of control. But the Dodgers weren't going to let it continue. Mookie Betts was the first Dodger to reach the scrum. He didn't hesitate. He pushed his way between Ohtani and the Rockies players, creating a barrier with his own body. Freddie Freeman was right behind him. Then Will Smith. Then half the Dodgers roster, pouring out of the dugout, sprinting across the field, ready to protect their teammate at all costs. The umpires were trying to regain control. They were shouting. Waving their arms. Physically separating players. But for a moment, for one wild, chaotic moment, Dodger Stadium felt like it was on the verge of something truly ugly. The crowd was on its feet. Some fans were booing. Some were screaming. Some were recording on their phones, trying to capture every angle of what was happening. And in the middle of it all, Ohtani was still on his feet, but barely. He was holding his side. His face showed pain. Not the dramatic, performative kind of pain. The real kind. The kind that makes you wonder how badly he's hurt and whether he's going to be able to continue. The trainers finally pushed through the crowd of players and reached him. They started asking questions. Checking his ribs. Watching his breathing. And the longer they stayed with him, the more the concern in the stadium grew. Because if Ohtani is hurt, if he has to leave this game, if the Rockies' aggression has caused an injury that sidelines him for any length of time, then this isn't just a wild ninth-inning moment. This is a story that will dominate baseball for weeks. The benches had cleared completely by this point. Both teams were on the field. Coaches were holding players back. Umpires were issuing warnings. And somewhere in the chaos, the Rockies' manager was being ejected. He was screaming at the umpires. Screaming about the initial collision. Screaming about how his player was just trying to make a play and the Dodgers were overreacting. But his words were lost in the noise. Because everyone watching this game, everyone in that stadium, everyone watching the broadcast at home, could see exactly what had happened. The initial collision might have been incidental. Might have been just part of the game. But what followed wasn't. What followed was multiple Rockies players going after Ohtani in a way that crossed every line. And the fact that their manager was defending it, that he was trying to spin it as something justifiable, only made the situation worse. It took nearly 10 minutes to restore order. 10 minutes of players being separated and warned and sent back to their dugouts. 10 minutes of Ohtani being examined by trainers while the entire stadium held its breath. 10 minutes of announcers replaying the sequence from every available angle, trying to piece together exactly what had happened and why it had escalated so quickly. And when the field finally cleared, when the umpires finally signaled that play could resume, Ohtani was still in the game. He was hurting. That was obvious. He was moving more carefully than usual. His breathing looked labored. But he refused to come out. He refused to let the Rockies' aggression take him off that field. And the crowd, which had been silent with worry just moments earlier, erupted. Because that's who Shohei Ohtani is. That's what he represents. Not just talent. Not just skill. But toughness. The refusal to be intimidated. The refusal to back down even when multiple players are coming at you with intent to hurt. The game resumed, but the energy had completely changed. What had been a comfortable Dodgers lead in a relatively calm ninth inning was now a powder keg. Every pitch felt loaded. Every at-bat felt tense. The Dodgers players were still furious. You could see it in their body language. In the way they were looking at the Rockies' dugout. In the way they were communicating with each other between pitches. And the Rockies, for their part, seemed to realize they had crossed a line. Some of their players looked uncomfortable. Some looked defiant. But all of them knew that what had just happened wasn't going to be forgotten. The league was going to review it. Suspensions were likely coming. And the narrative around this game, around this series, around the Rockies season, had just shifted in a way that was going to follow them for a long time. When the final out was recorded, when the Dodgers finally secured the win, there was no celebration. No high fives. No smiles. Just a team walking off the field with their best player hurting and their emotions still running hot. Ohtani walked slowly toward the dugout. Teammates stayed close to him. Checking on him. Asking if he was okay. Offering support in whatever way they could. And as he disappeared into the tunnel, the cameras stayed on the spot where the chaos had erupted. The dirt near first base still showed the scuff marks from where players had been standing. From where Ohtani had been surrounded. From where the ninth inning had turned into something no one expected. The press conference room was packed. Every reporter in the building wanted answers. They wanted to hear from Dave Roberts. They wanted to hear from Ohtani. They wanted to know how badly he was hurt, whether the Rockies would face consequences, and whether this incident was going to have lasting effects on the rivalry between these two teams. Robert spoke first. His voice was controlled, but the anger underneath was unmistakable. He talked about the collision being part of the game. About how players compete hard and sometimes contact happens. But then his tone shifted. He talked about what happened after the collision. About multiple players going after Ohtani. About the aggression that went beyond competition and crossed into something dangerous. And he made it clear that the Dodgers would not tolerate it. That they would be filing complaints with the league. That they expected the Rockies players involved to face serious consequences. Because protecting Ohtani isn't just about protecting one player. It's about protecting the integrity of the game. It's about making it clear that targeting a superstar, that ganging up on a player in a moment of vulnerability, is not acceptable under any circumstances. When Ohtani finally sat down in front of the microphones, the room went quiet. Everyone wanted to see how he was moving. Whether he was visibly injured. Whether the pain was as bad as it had looked on the field. He moved carefully as he sat down. He took a slow breath before speaking. And when he finally addressed what had happened, his words were measured. He didn't attack the Rockies. He didn't call for suspensions or demand apologies. He simply said that the collision was part of the game, but what happened afterward was unnecessary. He talked about how baseball is a physical sport and emotions run high, but there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. And when a reporter asked if he was afraid of retaliation in future games, Ohtani's answer was simple. I'm not afraid. I'll keep playing the same way I always play. That response said everything. It said that the Rockies' aggression hadn't intimidated him. It said that he wasn't going to change his approach or play cautiously because of what had happened. It said that Shohei Ohtani is exactly who everyone thinks he is. Tough. Fearless. Unshakable. The league's response came quickly. Within hours of the game ending, the commissioner's office announced that they would be reviewing the incident. Video from multiple angles would be examined. Statements from umpires, players, and coaches would be collected. And disciplinary action would be taken if warranted. The baseball world waited to see what that action would look like. Whether the Rockies players involved would be suspended. Whether fines would be issued. Whether this incident would be treated with the seriousness it deserved or brushed aside as just another on-field scuffle. But inside the Dodgers clubhouse, the focus had already shifted. The focus was on Ohtani's health. On making sure he was okay. On getting him treatment and rest and making sure that whatever damage had been done in that chaotic ninth inning wouldn't keep him off the field for long. The wild chaos at Dodger Stadium in the ninth inning became the story that dominated every sports network. Replays were shown over and over. Analysts debated whether the initial collision was dirty or just unfortunate. Fans argued about whether the Rockies players should face criminal charges or just suspensions. And through it all, one image remained burned into everyone's memory. Shohei Ohtani, surrounded by multiple Rockies players, absorbing their aggression, refusing to retaliate, and then refusing to leave the game. That image captured everything about who he is. Not just as a player, but as a person. And it made one thing perfectly clear. You can come at Ohtani with everything you have. You can try to intimidate him. You can try to hurt him. But you will not break him. Because Shohei Ohtani is built differently. And the Dodgers, standing behind him, are built the same way. Tough. Relentless. Unstoppable.